Chapter 24-24. Queely was a bit hesitant. Just then Terence answered first. I'm Queely's lawyer. I'll be in charge of this. Chen Zhao glanced at Queely, and then at Terence. It seems that only the police can file a lawsuit for dangerous driving. I'll urge the police to file a lawsuit. Miss Terence, Chen Zhao said unhappily. It's just a normal traffic accident. But your employees have already hurt my client. That's not hurt. It's an accident. The court will decide whether it's an accident or a dangerous injury. If it was his problem, Chen Zhao would have left long ago. But now, Mord and Belia had gotten into an accident while working for him. He couldn't just leave them be. Plus, he needed people. Chen Zhao turned to look at Queely. Miss Queely, I apologize on behalf of my employees for the harm they've caused you. However, they didn't do it on purpose, so I hope you can be more tolerant towards them. As for other compensations, as long as they're reasonable and within my capabilities, I'm willing to pay for them. Chen Zhao's tone was sincere and his attitude was very humble. Queely lowered her head and thought for a moment. But when she met Terence's gaze, she still took a deep breath. Terence will be in charge of this. This time, Chen Zhao was really angry. He'd already given her enough face. Since she wouldn't listen to his kind advice, he could only turn against her. Doing this won't get you any benefits. Queely is just exercising her authority. Fine, that's all I have to say, Chen Zhao said. If you really want to fight in court, I'll accompany you to the end. With that, Chen Zhao turned and left. After leaving the ward, Chen Zhao picked up his phone and called Alex. Alex, that's how it is. I understand. Leave it to me. Also, how much do you need me to do? At the very least, I can compensate. If you can make it so that I don't even have to pay, that's even better, Chen Zhao said calmly. Although he'd given the check, it could be voided with a call to the bank. Chen Zhao said that the check would only be valuable if it had value. Tyryness, isn't this a little too much? He didn't do it on purpose. Queely, don't you understand? What you need right now is to attract attention. It has nothing to do with their compensation. The most important thing is to make this a hot topic. I'll contact the entertainment media and let them publicize this incident, Tyrese said. But this is indeed a very ordinary traffic accident. Whether it's a traffic accident or not is up to us to decide. Trust me, I can make this ordinary traffic accident not look so simple. Also, I've seen the two people at fault in the accident. They're definitely not good kids. Maybe they already have a lot of criminal records in the police station. Just then the door was pushed open. There was no knock. Tylan frowned. This was a high-class ward. She thought they were paramedics. Just as she was about to lose her temper, she saw that it wasn't a doctor or nurse who came in. The leader was a woman, and behind her was a large group of people. From this woman's temperament, Tylan could clearly sense a familiar aura. Traveling together. Tylan's expression darkened. There was a saying that could be used in any industry. Traveling together is always an enemy. In the lawyer industry, this was a well-known saying. Who are you? This is private space. Please leave immediately, Tylan said. She took out her phone and tried to call the hospital's security. In fact, she didn't even have the hospital's number. However, she had to maintain her posture. At the same time, she looked at Alex and the others with a threatening gaze. Who's Queely Julian? Alex clearly knew who Queely was, but she still looked at the two of them as if she didn't know them. In fact, before she came here, her team had already investigated the two of them thoroughly. I am. What can I do for you? Queely wasn't a lawyer. She had never seen such a scene before. She immediately flinched in fear. Alex looked at Queely. Are you Miss Queely? I'm Mord and Belia's lawyer. I'm now representing my client to file a lawsuit against you and the police who handled this accident. Dangerous driving, endangering public safety, violating justice, and intentionally causing an unfair punishment. What? You're their lawyers? What right do you have to sue me? I'm the victim. No. According to our investigation and evidence, we've found enough witnesses to prove that you're the main culprit in this accident because you were driving too slowly. The normal speed on the road at the time of the accident is 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. My client was driving at 40 kilometers per hour when the accident happened. You were driving too slowly, below 20 kilometers per hour. That's why my client made the wrong judgment. After the accident, you didn't explain the matter and purposely threatened the police. That's why the police issued an unfair verdict. Tylen's mouth was wide open. Queely's expression froze. She couldn't speak at all. Tylen had thought that she was already an elite in the legal field. But now, she realized that she was really too naive. Only after seeing a true elite did she understand what it meant to distort the truth. Moreover, the other party was unreasonable. You can't do this. Tylen also didn't know what to do. Alex looked at Tyrese and said with a mocking smile, "No, I can. Miss Tyrese, Miss Quinn, you'd better be prepared not to do anything for the next 3 years. You'll be very busy. You need to focus on this lawsuit, and you need to accept the identity of the defendant." "Wait, we want to talk to Mr. Chen." Queely was the first to give in. She wasn't the one who took the initiative. Tylen was basically the one in charge. She wanted to create a topic to make her more famous in the entertainment industry. In the end, it backfired and completely angered the other party. "I'm sorry, my client is Morid and Miss Belia. Because of their serious injuries, especially the severe impact to their brains, they're unconscious. We also found out that Miss Queely has been involved in many traffic accidents in the past 3 years. We'll suggest that the police reinvestigate the traffic accidents in the past and investigate this accident together to see if Miss Queely deliberately created danger. By the way, my boss is a very persistent person. He once spent $5 million in legal fees for a $200,000 lawsuit. Believe me, he wouldn't mind spending $10 million for the sake of his employees to achieve the desired result." Chapter 24-25. Alex's visit this time was purely to intimidate them. She wouldn't talk to them immediately. She'd investigated Taryn's qualifications. She'd graduated from law school less than a year ago. She was Quinn's manager and lawyer at the same time. In fact, this was very unprofessional. In Alex's law firm, there were also lawyers who worked as consultants or private lawyers for some celebrities. But when they were lawyers, they would never work as managers for celebrities. There was a conflict between the business and time of the two. Terrence was doing this purely unprofessional. In this era, it wasn't a compliment for the capable to do more work. It was professional to specialize in one's field. If Alex needed to direct public opinion, she would hire a professional company to do it. Combining the above points, it was obvious that Tyrese was a rookie. She could use her professional knowledge to fool laymen. For example, someone like Chen Zhao. Laymen knew that they couldn't kill people, but they didn't know that there were many situations in which people could be killed. Lawyers could list out the consequences and reasons for killing people. But compared to Terrence, Alex and her team were much more professional. Terrence only wanted to use the incident itself to create a topic for Quinn, but Alex planned to use it instead. Quinn's intention meant that she'd purposely caused the traffic accident. Once they went to court, Alex would directly create this topic in the mainstream media. In order to become famous, the female celebrity had purposely created a car accident, causing 2 people to be seriously injured and hospitalized. Of course, it wasn't necessary now. For one, they didn't have any deep hatred. It was just a threat. Moreover, it costs money to get on the news and by trending topics. A lot of money. Alex only needed to let these 2 kids understand who they were dealing with. Quinn and Terrence broke out in a cold sweat. Alex was directly interrupting their careers, and even their lives. They'd had a good discussion at first, using the car accident to create a topic. But they didn't expect the other party to be so ruthless. She turned the tables on them. Then Alex left with her majestic team. Terrence and Quinn, who hadn't recovered from the shock, were left in the ward. They thought that the person responsible for the accident was very simple. Trying to create a topic because of the accident, and creating a traffic accident for the sake of popularity. They were 2 different things. "Tylen, what do you think we should do? I didn't want to cause trouble, but you just had to provoke that person." Tyrese was both angry and afraid. She did not expect that she, who had been winning just a moment ago, would be completely outmaneuvered the next moment. "I'll think of something." Tyrese knew this was Queely's personality. Not bad perhaps, but annoying. She didn't agree to it, but she didn't object either. If something went wrong, then the responsibility would all be on him. However, this matter was indeed her responsibility. She was so full of herself that she even neglected the other party's wealth. In this country, money meant everything. Terence took a deep breath and walked out of the ward. He went downstairs to Morid and Belia's ward. She was here to admit her mistake and ask for forgiveness at the same time. It was embarrassing, but she was a lawyer. Moreover, she did not want to gamble with her career or even her entire life. Mr. Morid, Miss Belia, hello, I remember you. Morid interrupted her. What's the matter? I'm not feeling well right now, especially after seeing you. Chen Zhao had already told him when he came. Morid and Belia did not know how Chen Zhao had fought with them, but they still trusted Chen Zhao. This was basically no problem for Chen Zhao. That was why they asked for Chen Zhao's help. It was just as they had guessed. The domineering Tyrese who had been here once before had actually come over to admit her mistake. Mr. Morid, Ms. Belia, what do you want to do to make your boss give up on suing Ms. Quealy? In fact, this dispute was no longer about who won or lost after going to court. Because if it really went to court, the other party would definitely not fight the case honestly. Once they fell out, the other party would first slander Quealy in the media. By then, whether the lawsuit was won or lost, Quealy would lose. And if Quealy's Hollywood career was interrupted because of this, then Terence would also have to bear the blame. By then, Terence wouldn't just lose her job. Because of her, her client, and even her boss's career would be interrupted. She wouldn't have any jobs in the future. So no matter how embarrassing it was, she had to apologize and beg for the other party's forgiveness. We're not feeling well right now. We'll talk about this after our injuries are healed. Chen Zhao had told them not to go overboard, but he could still make things difficult for Terence to vent his anger. Ms. Belia, are you interested in developing your career in Hollywood? Ms. Quealy has a lot of connections in Hollywood. To Terence, everyone in L.A., regardless of man or woman, had the dream of becoming a star. Also, Belia didn't seem very old. She should be easy to fool. Perhaps Chen Zhao could use her to solve this crisis. Not interested. Belia rolled her eyes. What a joke. If she really wanted to find a role, Chen Zhao could arrange one for her. Was there a need to arrange one for a stranger? Terrence's expression froze. She couldn't even use the lines she had prepared. Ms. Belia, don't you want to think about it? This is a rare opportunity. Maybe one day, you'll become a big star. Belia and Morid both rolled their eyes hard. Terence could feel their gazes. They looked at her like she was an idiot. This made her very uncomfortable. You don't believe me? Miss Quealy is a big star. Big star. You think you're a star just because you acted in an independent movie, and it's even the second female lead? Morid said impolitely. He'd heard of Quealy. His impression of Quealy was that she'd once sacrificed herself for art in that independent movie. He wasn't in the entertainment industry, but he still knew some common sense. The star Terence was talking about was probably just a C-list actor. How could she call herself a star with this kind of status? Ms. Quealy has a new movie coming out soon. It's a mainstream commercial movie. Her previous independent movies are just training for her acting skills. Chapter 24-26. What conditions do you have? We need compensation, Moritz said shamelessly. Compensation? How much? $1 million, and we'll let this go. We're the victims. You're the responsible party. Why should we pay? Tylens was about to go crazy. She had never seen such a shameless person with such a shameless request. We wanted to pay, but you didn't want it. Moritz sneered at Tylens. Tylens suddenly did not know how to retort. In the end, it was all her own doing. The other party did not intend to make a big deal out of this. They wanted to keep the peace and discuss compensation. But she thought that she had the upper hand. Then, the other party went crazy and planned to die together with her. Of course, this might not be considered dying together at all. It might be completely destroyed by the other party. Even if the other party lost the lawsuit, the two of them would at most have to issue an apology. The two of them were just nobodies. They could not recover Quealy's lost reputation. However, if Quill lost, it would be a disaster for her acting career. Judging from the current situation, they were more likely to lose. But we're the ones who suffered. Even if we don't include Miss Queely's medical fees, her supercar needs to be repaired. It's not a small amount. At most, we won't ask for your compensation. You asked for it. It's your fault for offending our boss. Tylens calmed herself down. We can compensate, but 1 million is too much. 50,000 at most. Do you think we're beggars? If this is your sincerity, we'll see you in court. To be honest, Mord and Belia were not the kind of people who were calculative. Most of what they were going to say was prepared by Chen Zhao. In the end, they entered the bargaining stage, and finally, the two sides finalized a compensation of $300,000. Of course, Queely would have to pay Mord and Belia $300,000. This number was also set by Alex. $300,000 was not a small amount. At least for a celebrity like Quill, $300,000 was an acceptable amount, but it was also a painful amount to spend. Of course, Alex did not want to fight this kind of lawsuit. Firstly, the chances of winning were not high. Secondly, it was expensive. Once they fell out, Chen Zhao would have to spend even more money to bribe the media to suppress them. This money was a waste. Moreover, there was no deep enmity between the two sides. Therefore, there was no need to fight to the death. Of course, Quirrell and Terrence still had to sign a contract. He expressed that he would not pursue the matter of the accident and would settle it through private negotiations. This was also the condition of the settlement between the two sides. After all, both sides were on guard against each other. When Tylan left, her mood was rather gloomy. This was the biggest mistake she had ever made in her career. On his way home, he received a call from Mord and Belia. Although this was not a big deal, it was not a small matter. However, it could be resolved peacefully in the end, and he didn't even need to pay. The final result was a happy one. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt an unfamiliar gaze. Through the rearview mirror, he saw a car following him. However, Chen Zhao realized that there were 4 gangsters in the car following him. Chen Zhao stopped by the road outside Mountain Town. Then, he got out of the car and waited for the car behind him to come. The car that was tailing him also stopped. 4 gangsters got out of the car. They were ordinary people, but they definitely did not know Chen Zhao. Holding a baseball bat, they walked toward Chen Zhao arrogantly. Chen Zhao strode forward, not giving them a chance to speak. He snatched the baseball bat from the gangster in front and swung his arm. The first gangster's jaw was smashed. Before the other 4 could say anything, Chen Zhao had already knocked them to the ground in a few moves. At the same time, he dragged the 4 of them into the cornfield nearby by their hair. Chen Zhao dragged them deep into the cornfield and casually threw them on the ground. He carried the baseball bat on his shoulder. "Tell me, who told you to come find me?" "Careful, I'll." Chen Zhao did not give him a chance to finish. The baseball bat drew a patch of blood. Crazy, the 4 wanted to run. But Chen Zhao continued with a flurry of bats, beating them until they curled up on the ground. One of them had already lost consciousness. Blood kept dripping from his forehead. He was the first to have his jaw smashed. The other 3 were covered in injuries too. They did not expect the person they were looking for to be so cruel. Chen Zhao picked another one and walked up to him. "Who told you to come?" "I don't know." "I don't know." Slap. Chen Zhao swung the bat again, hitting the gangster's shoulder. Chen Zhao picked the second one. "Who told you to come?" The gangster's face was filled with fear. He shook his head violently. "I don't know. I really don't know." Slap. Chen Zhao looked at the third gangster. "Someone gave me money, a woman. She told us to break your arms and legs. I don't know who she is." Chen Zhao frowned and swung the bat again. "I hate it when people interrupt my rhythm." Chen Zhao took out his phone and called David. "Hey David, I was attacked. 4 hoodlums. I'm injured." "Of course, I beat the 4 hoodlums before I got injured." "Yes, David." David. It was not the first time Chen Zhao had done this. Moreover, he would always ask for David's cooperation. Thus, David was already used to it. When David brought his men to the scene, he saw Chen Zhao standing there immaculately, but one of his arms was clearly dislocated. But when he saw the 4 heavily injured gangsters on the ground, David was even more certain of his guess. Chen Zhao's dislocation was clearly self-directed. Chen Zhao's dislocation was clearly self-directed. Moreover, Chen Zhao was a doctor. He knew the body structure and how to dislocate himself better than anyone else. Ronson also came with David. He knew how terrifying Chen Zhao was even better than David. Thus, he stood at the side in silence. Just like David, he looked at Chen Zhao, who was almost unharmed, and the 4 gangsters who were covered in injuries. He knew what had happened. "Help me find out who they are," Chen Zhao said to David. "You beat them up like this, and you still need me to find out who they are? That wasn't my intention. I was just defending myself." David couldn't help but roll his eyes. Defending himself? If it was a fully armed mercenary group, maybe you really needed to defend yourself, David thought to himself. At the same time he asked, "You really don't know who they are?" Chapter 24-27. David sighed. "Make your injuries worse. You're not convincing at all. Also, I called an ambulance for you." "What? Why? You seriously injured 4 people, and you didn't even go to the hospital. Is that self-defense?" "Fine. Do I need to lie on the ground now? As long as you're happy." David couldn't be bothered with Chen Zhao anymore. Nevertheless, Chen Zhao still obediently lay down in the ambulance. Adele was in Mountain Town at the moment. She sat in a restaurant and watched the police cars and ambulances whizzing past. A smile appeared on Adele's face. She'd hired those gangsters to cause trouble for Chen Zhao. Adele left the restaurant and followed the ambulance. She followed them all the way to the hospital. Adele saw Chen Zhao being pushed out of the ambulance. Her smile became even more satisfied, although she didn't know Chen Zhao and didn't know who he was. However, Chen Zhao was the boss of the 2 outsiders who'd been watching her. He must have sent them. But Adele didn't do this just for revenge. She also wanted to find out from Chen Zhao what his goal was. "Darling, I probably won't be able to come home tonight." Chen Zhao called Fei Lai. I'm in the hospital now. I beat up those gangsters, but David told me to act more realistically. I'll pretend to be injured and stay in the hospital for the night. Then I'll get the hospital to write a certificate of serious injuries. I'll have Alex take it to the police tomorrow. Okay, I'll be careful next time. At least I won't hit so hard. Okay, rest well. As soon as Chen Zhao hung up, he saw a nurse push a cart in. "Sir, it's time to take medicine." "Medicine?" Chen Zhao was stunned. He hadn't agreed to take medicine. He hadn't even been diagnosed. "What medicine?" "I don't know. But the police and doctor outside said that your arm has a soft tissue injury. They'll need to put a cast on you later." Hearing this, Chen Zhao's face darkened. The first person he thought of was David. David had tricked him on purpose. "I don't need medicine." The nurse had already prepared a syringe. She drew a bottle of medicine and glanced at Chen Zhao. "If you don't need medicine, you can tell the doctor." "What medicine is it?" Chen Zhao asked. "I don't know. Ask the doctor yourself." Chen Zhao picked up the empty bottle from the cart and looked. "Is this anesthetic?" "The doctor prescribed it for you." "I don't know. Give me your arm." The nurse grabbed Chen Zhao's wrist and was about to pry his sleeve open. "Wait, rub it with alcohol first. A grown man doesn't need to go through so much trouble." Damn, this nurse must be a newbie. Alcohol was used to soothe the condition of the skin and also to make the veins clearer. It also had a certain analgesic effect. Moreover, his skin was rough and his flesh was thick. If the needle pierced through, it would definitely break. "Forget it. I'll do it myself." Chen Zhao was about to get some alcohol. However, the nurse continued to push the needle downwards. Chen Zhao immediately grabbed the needle. The nurse didn't care too much. She felt some resistance in her hand, so she pushed harder. She was sure that the needle had stabbed into Chen Zhao's palm. "Who are you?" Chen Zhao frowned at the nurse. At this time, she stopped pretending and pulled down her mask. "You are." Chen Zhao found the nurse familiar, but he wasn't sure if he really knew her. The nurse was Adele in disguise. Adele had a mocking expression on her face. She directly lifted the blanket covering Chen Zhao. "What are you doing?" "I'm taking you to an interesting place, of course." With that, Adele reached out and dragged Chen Zhao off the bed. Then she placed him on the wheelchair beside her. "Fuck, why are you so heavy?" Adele finally moved Chen Zhao onto the wheelchair and then started pushing him out. At the same time, Chen Zhao felt something sharp poking his back. You better not make any noise. Otherwise you might get hurt. Fine, I promise I won't scream. Actually, Adele was quite worried. If Chen Zhao really screamed in the hospital, she wasn't confident that she could escape. After all, there were still police outside. The anesthetic she'd prepared for Chen Zhao was very strong, but she didn't understand why Chen Zhao could still make a sound. Perhaps the effects weren't there yet. Thankfully, Chen Zhao didn't plan on crying for help at all. Put the knife down. It's uncomfortable to keep poking it. You don't have to keep the knife in your hand. With your speed, you can kill me in a very short time. Plus, I value my life very much. I won't cry for help. Adele clearly didn't believe Chen Zhao. She still poked Chen Zhao's back with the knife and pushed the wheelchair forward. When they reached the parking lot, Adele wanted to shove Chen Zhao into the trunk again. If you shove me into the trunk, I'll keep screaming. A fierce glint flashed across Adele's eyes. Are you threatening me? Look at how cooperative I am. Am I not trustworthy? Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Adele. I can do whatever you want, but don't shove me into the trunk. I don't like it there. You don't have a choice now. No, I do. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Adele. As long as you haven't completely escaped, I do. Humph. Adele was very unhappy with Chen Zhao's attitude. However, she still didn't want to attract too much attention here. Thus, she still decided to put Chen Zhao in the passenger seat. Just like Chen Zhao said, he was very obedient. So obedient that it was as if he was Adele's old friend. After the car started, Chen Zhao asked, Where are we going now? Not us, me. It's the same. Wherever you go, you'll take me. You can't just leave me behind, right? That's possible. Adele glanced at Chen Zhao. Are you imagining that someone will come and save you? I can save myself too. Then how do you plan to save yourself? For example, money. I have money, a lot of money, Chen Zhao said. Huh? You think I kidnapped you for money? Maybe your original intention wasn't money, but if you have enough money, you might as well change your mind. Adele found Chen Zhao funny, very funny. He was actually using such a stupid method to survive. In a regular kidnapping case, once the kidnapper's request was satisfied, the first thing they would consider was not keeping their promise. Their first concern was not to keep their promise, but to get rid of all evidence. And the biggest evidence was the hostage itself. How much money can you give me? 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 24-28. How much do you think I'm worth? Chen Zhao asked in return. To me, you're worthless, Adele said. How can you be emotional about a kidnapper? You're very unprofessional. Adele was so angry that she laughed. Did this guy really think that she'd kidnapped him for money? Did he really think that she'd let him go for some money? From now on, you'll answer every question I ask. Ask away, Chen Zhao answered quickly. I'll tell you everything I know. Why did you send people to spy on me? Chen Zhao's eyes twitched. Spy on her? He didn't even know who she was. Oh, was she Homesius's wife? Chen Zhao didn't react at first. Then he realized that the woman was Homesius's wife. Also, from how she'd kidnapped him out of the hospital, she was probably very good at reconnaissance and anti-reconnaissance. Then, it wasn't that surprising that Mord and Belia had been discovered. Chen Zhao frowned. Did you cause the car accident of my 2 subordinates? What, you admit that you sent people to spy on me? Ha, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I did it. You still haven't answered my question. Why did you send people to spy on me? One day, I saw you on the street and fell in love at first sight. I wanted your contact number but was too embarrassed to ask for it directly, so I sent people to spy on you. Chen Zhao lied. Although Adele was said to be so, it did make her heart burst with joy. However, she was still aware of her own limitations. She definitely wasn't a beauty in the public sense. Also, after a few years of marriage, her figure was already out of shape. A rich man might fall in love with a woman at first sight, but it definitely wouldn't be her. Moreover, when she disguised herself as a nurse and pulled down her mask, Chen Zhao's eyes clearly didn't recognize her. You better not play tricks, or I'll make you regret it, Adele said coldly. Adele said coldly. And you even used 2 idiots to monitor me. This is simply an insult to me. Actually, you don't know my good intentions. I just know that they're stupid. Yes, they're indeed stupid. That's why I used them. I just wanted you to find out. Humph. Adele was not an innocent girl. She didn't believe a single word Chen Zhao said. If the two people sent to watch her were idiots, it could be understood that Chen Zhao didn't have many people. Or rather, he was not the type of person to do such a thing. He was a layman to begin with, so he could only find laymen. However, this didn't explain why Chen Zhao was watching her. You don't have to say it now. I have ways to make you talk. Then I'll wait and see. Hee. I want to see how long you can be so stubborn. Adele didn't bring him home. Instead, she brought him to an abandoned factory. Right now, Chen Zhao was tied to a metal pillar. He looked at Adele, who was trying her best to tie him up. Did you bring me to a place like this to play some thrilling game with me? Humph. Adele snorted coldly and grabbed a rusty iron rod. Maybe now is the best time for you to speak. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what kind of pain you'll suffer. I already said that I fell in love with you at first sight. Are you going to treat your admirer like this? Adele suddenly lifted the metal rod and swung it at Chen Zhao's arm. Ah! Chen Zhao screamed. Sir, can you speak now? I already said that I fell in love with you at first sight. Adele got angry and hit Chen Zhao with the stick again. Chen Zhao cried out in pain. At the same time, she pushed the rod against Chen Zhao's chin. You still don't want to say it? I already said it. What else do you want? If that's the case, it means that you're not scared enough. Adele stared at Chen Zhao fiercely. Maybe I won't hit your arm this time. Chen Zhao suddenly grinned. Actually, there's one more thing I didn't tell you. What is it? Adele thought that Chen Zhao was going to confess. Actually, I have masochistic tendencies, Chen Zhao said. I'm a severe masochist. Adele's expression turned cold. She suddenly raised the rod and swung it at Chen Zhao's head. Bang! The rod broke and flew out. But Chen Zhao only tilted his head slightly. But he still had a smile on his face. I haven't felt so good in a long time. Adele narrowed her eyes at Chen Zhao. She didn't know if Chen Zhao really had masochistic tendencies. But Chen Zhao still maintained a smile despite this level of attack. At least it meant that he wasn't afraid of the torture. No. Adele raised an eyebrow. It wasn't that he wasn't afraid of pain. He didn't feel any pain at all. Adele suddenly remembered that she'd injected him with a large dose of anesthesia. How could he feel any pain now? Adele thought of a good idea. You like being masochistic, right? Yes. Then I'll take you to a place that can satisfy your masochistic tendencies. Let's do it here. That's not up to you. Adele untied Chen Zhao and dragged him back to the car. Where are we going this time? To a place that can satisfy your needs, of course. Then I'll look forward to it. I hope it won't disappoint me. As Adele drove, she took out her phone. Homesius, it's me. Where are you now? I sent someone home just now, but you're not home. I'm heading toward you, Adele said. Also, I caught the person who was watching me. Before we come over, let's search his body to see if he has a tracker. Got it. Oh, why did you send someone to find me? LA isn't safe anymore. The investor wants me and the equipment to move out. I sent someone to pick you up. Didn't we just teleport? Yes, but the investor is still worried. Adele was silent for a while. Then she said, Homesius, your investor isn't a good person. You better be careful. Adele had met the man who had invested in Homesius once. The first impression the investor gave was that he was young, handsome, rich, and had a good temper. But for some reason, Adele just couldn't have a good impression of the investor. I know, but the data is in my head, and the researchers under him were all recruited by me. Unless he plans to waste the research data of the past few years, he can't do anything to me. That's for the best. Adele didn't care what forbidden experiments her husband was researching. She only cared about her husband himself. Chapter 24-29. Chen Zhao realized that Adele had driven the car to the beach. She didn't take the coastal road either. Instead, she drove directly into the gravel beach. The bumpy ride made Chen Zhao very uncomfortable. They drove for more than an hour. It was already nighttime. The sky was dark, and there was no starlight. Chen Zhao couldn't see anything outside. He could only hear the sound of waves rising and falling. Finally, Adele stopped the car. Adele dragged Chen Zhao out. You're not trying to drown me, are you? Chen Zhao's voice was filled with panic. What? Are you scared? I'm a masochist, but I don't want to die either. That's not up to you. Adele sneered. But Adele didn't plan to drown Chen Zhao. There was an old speedboat docked by the shore. People who didn't know better would definitely think that it was abandoned. In reality, the speedboat only looked old on the surface. Most of its normal functions could be used. At least it wouldn't capsize at sea. Adele tossed Chen Zhao onto the speedboat and started it. You left your car by the beach? Are you sure someone won't steal it? You shouldn't be worried about my car right now. I can't help it. I admire you. If you get hurt because of this, I'll feel bad. How about I buy you a new car later? Huh. I hope you still have the courage to say that when you see my husband later. Are you married? I didn't even know. Chen Zhao's face was filled with regret. After traveling on the sea for about 40 minutes, a very large cruise ship appeared in front of the speedboat. Chen Zhao looked at the ship and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Adele drove the speedboat to slow down and approached the luxurious cruise ship. After reaching the side of the ship, a ladder was thrown down on the deck. Chen Zhao was directly tied up and lifted onto the deck. Homesius stood on the deck and looked at Chen Zhao on the ground. He's the one who's watching you? Yes, it's him. Homesius looked at Chen Zhao. Who are you? You don't know me, but I know you. You're my rival in love. Homesius froze for a moment and looked up at Adele. Adele slapped her forehead. I can't do anything to him. No matter what I ask, he won't open his mouth. And he always uses this kind of thing to fool me. So I brought him to you. Do you have a way? Didn't we agree that you would bring me here and let me kill your husband? Then his assets would be transferred to your name, so that we could be together forever. Adele sighed and Homesius was speechless. Of course, he couldn't believe such words. However, he was rather angry at Chen Zhao. He dared to tease his wife in front of him. Did this guy think he was dead? Brat, I will make you wish you were dead. I hope you won't disappoint me. Chen Zhao shrugged. Prometheus waved his hand and had his two subordinates drag Chen Zhao up. Don't let him die too easily. Adele had suffered quite a bit from Chen Zhao along the way. Adele followed behind, and it was her first time at Homesius' new office. She had to admit that Homesius's investor was really rich. Such a huge cruise ship had actually been modified into a laboratory. The cost of this cruise ship was probably over $1 billion. This laboratory was even bigger and more luxurious than the previous one. Homesius, when are we leaving LA? The ship is heading for the international waters now, Homesius said. If we stay in the country, we might be discovered at any time. So the investor wants to take this cruise ship around the Pacific Ocean. First of all, we won't be investigated by any country on the international waters. It's also safer. What about me? You stay on the ship. If you're not used to it, you can get off at the next port of call. I don't care. Just then Chen Zhao was brought to a laboratory. Chen Zhao saw a 4-square-meter glass container with a huge octopus inside. The octopus weighed at least 2 tons. Its limbs and tentacles were almost all stuck to the glass. However, because the space was small, it wriggled rather slowly. Is this the result of your research? Adele asked. No, it's just an accident. Homesius shook his head. Homesius looked at Chen Zhao. You saw it too, right? Yeah, does it eat people? Ha, what do you think? Homesius sneered at Chen Zhao. You have one last chance. Tell me your goal, or you can go in and accompany it. To be honest, don't you feel like this is a scene from a monster movie? Enclosed space, monsters and scientists. Chen Zhao looked at the octopus in the glass container. By the way, is it a genetically modified animal? Homesius's face darkened. You really don't want to tell me? I'll ask you one last time. Are you going to tell me or not? I wonder how it tastes. Chen Zhao could feel spiritual qi from the octopus, but it wasn't huge. Theoretically, the more spiritual qi, the better the taste. Are you thinking about how to eat it? Maybe it's thinking the same thing now. Homesius looked at Chen Zhao with a half-smile. There's a saying in China, birds of a feather flock together. So you're destined to meet together. I hope you can discuss life. Homesius sneered. Send him in. Chen Zhao was dragged to the glass container. One of them pressed the switch. The container opened, and the two wanted to push Chen Zhao in quickly. But they didn't know that when they pushed Chen Zhao, He grabbed their clothes. Ah! The two fell before the container at the same time. At this moment, a wet tentacle stretched out from the container. "Oh no, close it!" Homesius yelled. But then the closed part of the container was blocked by the tentacle. The giant octopus took this opportunity to crawl out. "Oh no!" Homesius and Adele's expressions changed drastically. "Leave this lab." Homesius pulled Adele out of the lab. He quickly pressed a few passwords at the door, and the lab was immediately closed. Homesius let out a long sigh. Luckily, he didn't let this big guy escape. Otherwise, he would be in big trouble. This big guy could strangle a cow to death with one tentacle. It also had extremely powerful regenerative abilities and shocking defense. If it escaped, it would definitely start a massacre. Chapter 2430. Just then, a researcher ran over in a hurry. "Mr. Homesius, the boss is here." "The boss is here?" Homesius frowned. "Yes, on the deck." "How many people did he bring?" "Just him." "Why didn't he come in?" Homesius took a deep breath. "Let's go see him." When Homesius left with Adele, they didn't notice that the French window of the closed laboratory behind them made a cracking sound, and a clear spider web crack spread. Homesius and Adele came to the deck and saw a slender man in a suit with his back facing them. "Mr. Vincent." Homesius greeted. Vincent turned around with a faint smile on his face as usual. "Hello, Adele. I didn't expect you to be here. How long has it been since we last met?" Vincent greeted Adele first. "Hello, Mr. Vincent." Adele had only met Vincent once, so she only responded politely. Vincent's gaze fell on Homesius again. "Homesius." "Yes, Mr. Vincent. What can I do for you?" "No," Vincent said faintly. Vincent said faintly. "I'm here to inform you that my boss intends to close the laboratory." "Mr. Vincent, the laboratory has been moved to the cruise ship. There shouldn't be any safety problems, right? It's not a safety issue, but your research progress hasn't satisfied my boss." "But at least we've achieved some results," Homesius argued. "So this time I'm here to get the information. After I get the information, our cooperation will end." "Mr. Vincent, you're breaching the contract." Homesius's expression immediately turned cold. "Yes, since I breached the contract first, I've decided to compensate you." "What compensation?" "Money." Homesius sneered. "No, it's a chance for you and your wife to live," Vincent said. "What I want is only the research information that belongs to my boss. After I get it, we have nothing to do with each other. If you want to continue experimenting, I won't stop you." "What if I refuse?" Homesius asked. "My boss won't let you go, including your wife and your men. I want to see how your boss will not let us go." "All right, since our negotiation has failed, we'll take our leave here. I'll pass on your attitude to my boss." Vincent was not angry at Homesius' tough attitude. He kept smiling. But at that moment, Adele pulled out a gun and pointed it at Vincent's head. "Adele, what are you going to do?" Vincent's calm tone carried a hint of surprise. "I can't tip you off. Do you think that if you kill me, the boss won't know your attitude? At least he won't find out so early, right?" "Haha, bang." Vincent's laughter stopped abruptly, and he fell on his back. Homesius didn't expect Adele to shoot so decisively. "Leaving him alive is also a disaster," Adele said lightly. "Since we've already fallen out, there's no need to worry so much." But at this moment something strange happened. Vincent, who was supposed to be dead, moved. Immediately after, Vincent twisted his limbs and propped himself up to stand up. Homesius and Adele's expressions changed. When had they ever seen such a strange thing? At this moment, there was a bloody hole between Vincent's eyebrows. But at this moment, a bullet was pushed out of the hole between Vincent's eyebrows. Then the bloody hole began to slowly heal. "What a surprise!" Vincent twisted his neck. "Adele, so you have this side to you. How? How is this possible?" Adele's face was full of disbelief. "Adele, your actions make me very angry, so I decided not to inform the boss. I'll personally reap your lives." Although Vincent said he was angry, there was no sign of anger on his face. He still spoke in such a gentle tone. Homesius pulled Adele back. He felt a dangerous aura from Vincent. This feeling, it was like looking at the giant octopus in the laboratory. Homesius waved his hand, and the guards standing on the upper deck all pointed their guns at Vincent. They were in an illegal laboratory, and sometimes they had to deal with some out-of-control test subjects. Therefore, Homesius also hired a lot of gunmen to deal with some problems that the researchers couldn't handle. Although these people were spending Vincent's money, they were hired by Homesius. So of course, they were under Homesius' orders. What the hell are you? Homesius stared at Vincent. Thing? Your choice of words is too rude. Vincent was still so gentle. But at this moment, Homesius realized that Vincent's hands had sharp fingernails. Shoot! Homesius ordered. In an instant, all the gunmen fired at Vincent at the same time. Countless bullets landed on Vincent's body. The suit on his body was riddled with holes, and at the same time, it was dripping with blood. However, this time, Vincent did not fall but swayed. Bullets were expelled from his body one by one. Even the bullet hole in his head healed in a short period of time. The gunfire stopped, and everyone looked at Vincent. Everyone had an incredulous expression on their faces. Vincent, who couldn't be killed, made the atmosphere extremely strange. I forgot to tell you, I have an immortal body. I don't believe you can't die. A gunman didn't believe it, and threw out a grenade with a fuse. Vincent caught the grenade, and it exploded at this moment. In an instant, flesh and blood flew everywhere, and half of Vincent's body was blown to pieces. However, his lower body did not fall, and the flesh and blood that splashed out wriggled and glued together again. At this time, everyone believed his words. He really had an immortal body. Vincent's body recovered very quickly, and in less than 20 seconds, it was completely restored. However, his clothes could not be restored. At this time, everyone found that Vincent's body was covered in scars. Vincent looked at the gunman, who threw the grenade at him, and suddenly jumped towards the gunman. Da-da-da. Ah, when Vincent stood up again, his hands were dripping blood. Let's go. Homesius pulled Adele back into the cabin. The Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2431. The gunman's screams kept coming from behind. At the same time, Vincent's voice was so close. Homesius, Adele, you can't escape. Ignoring what was happening behind him, Homesius took out the walkie-talkie and said, Everyone, get your weapons and kill Vincent. But just then, a series of gunshots came from the walkie-talkie. Mr. Homesius, bad news. Deep Blue escaped. Da-da-da. What? Homesius was shocked. Wasn't Deep Blue locked in the lab? How did it escape? But Homesius only panicked for a moment. He quickly calmed down. Where's Deep Blue now? In the lower lab. Ah. Before the person on the other end could finish, he screamed. But the gunshots didn't stop. The scene was also very chaotic. Let's go to the lower lab, Homesius said. You want to lure Vincent down there? Let him fight Deep Blue to the death? That's the only thing we can do now, Homesius said. Turn right from the front and walk straight to the end. That's my office. In the third drawer under the computer desk is the portable hard drive that I used to record my research data. Help me put it away. Or just destroy it. Adele and Homesius split up. When Adele ran past the previous lab, she found a huge hole in the glass research. That was where the giant octopus called Deep Blue had escaped from. There was also a bloodstain on the ground. Who knew which unlucky guy left it? Without thinking, Adele hurried to Homesius' office. But when she pushed the door open, she saw someone sitting in front of Homesius' computer. It was none other than Chun Zhao, whom she'd thought was dead. At the moment, Chun Zhao's legs were crossed on the computer desk. This D*Ned guy was even wearing a headset. Hello, you're here, Adele. Adele's face darkened. She pointed the gun at Chun Zhao. Why are you here? Adele carefully shifted her angle and glanced at the computer screen. She'd thought that Chun Zhao was searching for some information in Homesius' computer. But when she looked closely, she almost vomited blood. This guy was actually watching cartoons. What are you doing here? Haven't you noticed? I'm playing on the computer. No, I'm asking you, why did you come here? I don't know the way here, so I ended up here after a few turns. Chun Zhao answered honestly. What did you find in this computer? Your husband also likes to watch anime. Hands up. Adele scolded. Chun Zhao raised his hands cooperatively. Can you move now? Yeah. Just now you were going to feed me to that big octopus. I was so scared that I shivered, and then I could move again. Huh. Adele looked at Chen Zhao's playful expression. Would he be afraid? Even when he was very close to the octopus, he wasn't afraid. How did you escape from the mouth of that giant octopus? Oh, it's busy eating the other two and has no time to care about me. Adele thought of the two people who should have thrown Chen Zhao to the octopus. In the end, the two of them became the octopus's food. You're pretty lucky. Why didn't you run? Run. It's so chaotic outside. Where can I run? Stand up. Don't put your hands down. Come out slowly. Chen Zhao was very cooperative. She couldn't find any desire to resist on his face. Adele entered the computer desk. She fumbled around and found the portable hard drive. Adele looked at Chen Zhao and loaded her gun. It seemed like she was going to kill Chen Zhao on the spot. You still have to go out, right? I'm like a scapegoat in your hands. If you run into danger, you can use me first. Don't you think so? Adele looked at Chen Zhao's sneaky smile. She didn't think that Chen Zhao would be so kind. But Chen Zhao's plan was indeed feasible. Whether it was Vincent or Deep Blue, Chen Zhao could be used for a while. Even if he could delay them for a second, he could buy a second for himself. Go out. Walk in front. Can you let me finish this episode? Adele wasn't sure when she would explode and shoot Chen Zhao's head off. After a while Chen Zhao stopped. Go up. Or go down. Go down. Hurry up. The gunshots below were very intense. Adele was anxious. She was worried that something would happen to Homesius. After going down to the lower lab, there were more corpses along the way. Just then, Adele saw Homesius and a few researchers shooting at Deep Blue with submachine guns. Homesius! Adele yelled. Seeing Adele, Homesius left the researchers who were fighting with him. Did you get it? Yes. Let's go. Homesius had just taken 2 steps when he suddenly noticed Chen Zhao. How come it's him? How come he's still alive? She asked the same question just now, Chen Zhao said. Homesius pointed the submachine gun at Chen Zhao. Don't you think that as humans, we should be on the same side? That monster is about to kill all your people. Prometheus turned around and saw that Deep Blue had indeed killed a few of his research subordinates. It's much bigger now. It can adjust its body size through eating, Homesius said. Then he suddenly realized that he didn't need to explain anything. Adele, let's go. Go where? Go to the stern from another direction. There's a built-in lifeboat there. But just then, a figure blocked Homesius and Adele's path. Homesius, Adele, we meet again. Vincent appeared in front of the two of them, but his gaze was drawn to Indigo again. I didn't think that the flesh and blood I provided would result in such a thing. But you didn't report this to me at all. Looks like you've been disloyal for a long time. Hand it over and I'll give you a dignified death. Is there such a thing as dignified death? Chen Zhao interrupted at an untimely time. Hello, sir. You don't seem to be from here. Vincent looked at Chen Zhao with a gentle smile. He felt that Chen Zhao wasn't from here, because Chen Zhao also had a smile on his face. Yes, you can tell by looking at where their guns are pointing. It's okay. If they dare to shoot, they'll be with you soon. Chapter 2432. Chen Zhao turned back to look at Homesius and Adele. We're all humans. Shouldn't we be united and fight against the enemy? Who's united with you? Adele pointed her gun at Chen Zhao and sneered. Looks like they don't appreciate your kindness. How about I help you get rid of them? Vincent said, smiling. Why don't you go kill that giant octopus first? Whoever wins can decide whether we live or die. How about that? Chen Zhao chuckled at Vincent. You want me to fight that octopus to the death? It's best if we die together. That way, you'll have a chance to escape, right? Is my intention that obvious? Ha! What do you think? Vincent's smile was cold. Suddenly, he reached out to grab Chen Zhao. You go play with that octopus. Vincent wanted to throw Chen Zhao at Deep Blue, but he grabbed nothing. Without any warning, Chen Zhao raised a foot and kicked Vincent's waist. You go. Vincent staggered back a few steps. Touching his waist, he stared at Chen Zhao in shock. You. Before Vincent could speak, a wet tentacle had already wrapped around Vincent's small foot from below. Then, with a sweep, Vincent's head swept across the metal floor. The sound was so loud that it sounded like a gong. Bang bang. Vincent's head was bleeding from the blow. Deep Blue seemed to think that Vincent was already dead. Just like the other humans it had killed before, it casually tossed Vincent aside. However, Vincent stood up again. His face was covered in blood, and the smile on his face was gone. He looked at Chun Zhao with a dark expression, but Chun Zhao was nowhere to be seen. Just when Vincent thought that Chun Zhao had escaped, he heard Chun Zhao's voice from another direction. Keep going. Don't stop. Vincent, Adele, and Homesius looked up and realized that Chun Zhao was already sitting on the railing on the upper floor. He was looking at Vincent with interest. Chun Zhao held an apple in his hand. No one knew where he got it from. Adele and Homesius were also very puzzled. In the blink of an eye, he was only attracted by Indigo and Vincent for a few seconds. Chun Zhao had already climbed to such a high place. Instead of running, he sat on the railing and watched the show. Vincent was so furious that he didn't care about Indigo, who had just beaten him up. He leaped up and grabbed at Chun Zhao. However, before he could catch Chun Zhao threw the apple in his hand. Vincent was hit in the face and fell from the sky. Deep Blue stretched out her tentacles again, grabbed Vincent on the ground, and beat the mole a few more times. It directly knocked Vincent into a daze. And Indigo's intelligence was very high. In fact, the intelligence of an ordinary octopus was already very high. Deep Blue's size meant that its brain capacity was even larger than that of an ordinary octopus. The first time Vincent didn't die, so this time it used more force. It wasn't until Vincent's body was smashed that he threw it out. However, Vincent stood up again. Yo, so powerful. He's not dead yet. Is this guy a cockroach? Chun Zhao's voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard him clearly. Vincent was no longer calm. There was only uncontrollable rage on his face. Right now, he wanted to kill Chun Zhao the most. His second was Indigo, who had made him so miserable. Let's go, Homesius said in a low voice. Coincidentally, that guy attracted Vincent and Indigo's attention. Adele also retreated quietly, moving as slowly as possible. However, Vincent only glanced at them from the corner of his eyes, and already knew their intentions. No one can escape. Suddenly, the scars on Vincent's body started leaving his body. The scene was very strange. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard to understand. In fact, those who saw it with their own eyes would be even more confused. The scars were like poisonous snakes. They weren't like snakes. They were snakes, sea snakes. These sea snakes burrowed into every corner and covered the entire ship. Screams rang out one after another. It was as if there were countless sea snakes hidden on Vincent's body. He kept shaking them off. Chun Zhao reached out and caught a sea snake. Thank you for your gift. Chun Zhao waved his hand while holding the sea snake. Adele and Homesius, on the other hand, were forced to lean against a corner by a few sea snakes. Vincent looked at the two and said coldly, I've lost my patience. Hand over the research data. Suddenly, Indigo's tentacles swept horizontally. However, Vincent wasn't sent flying this time. Indigo grabbed Indigo's tentacle with one hand. Low-level bastard. Vincent glanced at Indigo and suddenly swung his arm. Indigo's huge body was smashed more than 10 meters away. However, Indigo's defense was rather shocking. Vincent's strength was very strong, but it wasn't enough to kill Indigo. Vincent stared at Indigo, his eyes releasing red light. As a superior, I order you to submit to me. Indigo seemed to be afraid of Vincent. At least, it was afraid of the current Vincent. Very good. Seems like you're smart enough. Vincent looked at Indigo coldly. Now kill that guy. Vincent pointed at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao's smile suddenly froze. Weren't we having fun just now? I thought we were friends. Lowly human, you don't have the right to be my friend. Indigo looked at Chun Zhao, but it didn't listen to Vincent's order to attack Chun Zhao. Instead, it looked at Chun Zhao with fear. Clearly, he'd had a bad experience with Chun Zhao before. Little octopus, do you want to be barbecued? Indigo wriggled, as if trying to escape. Indigo, what's going on? It looks more timid than I thought, Adele said. Timid? Homesius said. It killed more than 10 people. But they still couldn't understand why Indigo was afraid when facing Chun Zhao. Idiot, don't you understand my order? Go up and kill him. Kill that man. Chen Zhao jumped down from the railing upstairs and stepped on Indigo's head. Indigo didn't react at all. It had no intention of slapping Chen Zhao down. Looks like your words don't work. Vincent clearly felt it too. His pressure on Indigo couldn't compare to Indigo's fear of that man. He didn't know what Chen Zhao had done to Indigo, but it was clear that Indigo was afraid of him. Vincent squinted at Chen Zhao. Looks like you're not a normal person. You're a spiritualist? Spiritualist? Adele and Homesius clearly didn't know what a spiritualist was. The first thing that came to mind was the kind of ghost catcher you see in the movies. Chapter 2433. What about you? You're clearly not a human. Are you a demon? Chen Zhao wasn't sure of Vincent's identity. He had a faint demonic aura on him. This made Chen Zhao suspect that Vincent was a hybrid. But some of his characteristics were different from humans. For example, his self-healing ability. Such a powerful self-healing ability made Chen Zhao very suspicious. No matter how much a hybrid's power was developed, it would be difficult for him to have Vincent's terrifying self-healing ability. For example, if Chen Zhao's body was penetrated, he could heal himself. But if his organs and head were damaged, he definitely wouldn't be able to heal himself like Vincent. Of course, other than that, Vincent had nothing else he was proud of. To ordinary people, his power was indeed very strong. But in the supernatural organization, any member should be stronger than him. Why doesn't Deep Blue attack him? As Deep Blue's creator, Homesius knew very well how savage it was. To it, all creatures that entered its field of vision were its food, and they would all become its food. But it had no intention of attacking Chen Zhao at all. Even when Chen Zhao stepped on its head, it lay on the ground obediently. Just then, the sea snakes that had separated from Vincent crawled back from all corners. They covered the entire cabin, so dense that it made one's scalp go numb. Vincent waved his arm gently. Instantly, all the sea snakes lunged at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't dodge. He just let the snakes bite him. But they couldn't break through his defense. However, their teeth could pierce through Chen Zhao's clothes. This caused them to all hang on Chen Zhao's body. They were so densely packed that it looked rather strange. This isn't fun at all. Chen Zhao shook his head. Vincent was very surprised to see that his sea snake couldn't even pose a slight threat to Chen Zhao. Any one of these sea snakes could poison dozens of people to death. But so many of them couldn't do any damage to Chen Zhao at all. Chen Zhao's body shook, and all the sea snakes were shattered. Adele and Homesius widened their eyes and stared at Chen Zhao in astonishment. How did you catch him before? Homesius asked in shock. Adele's face darkened. He's never really been caught by me. He's been playing with me. Adele wasn't an idiot. She thought back to Chen Zhao's previous abnormalities and figured it out. From start to finish, Chen Zhao didn't show any fear. It was because he had never really been controlled by Adele. Naturally, he had no reason to be afraid of her. Vincent's expression became solemn. He also realized that Chen Zhao was very strong. No, it should be said that he was terrifyingly strong. Human, you have indeed exceeded my expectations. However, you cannot kill me. As long as you exhaust all your strength. Really? Chen Zhao didn't believe in immortality. In the past, Chen Zhao had encountered many enemies with powerful self-healing abilities. But in the end, they still died under his iron fist. Chen Zhao punched out furiously. No one saw Chen Zhao's punch. There was only a shadow of a fist that arrived in an instant. In an instant, Vincent's body shattered. I'd like to see if you can still revive after your body is shattered. As soon as Chen Zhao finished speaking, he saw the completely shattered flesh and blood reassemble. Chen Zhao opened his mouth in disbelief. He didn't die. Adele and Homesius were also shocked. They were shocked by Chen Zhao's strength and Vincent's almost limitless revival ability. Chen Zhao didn't believe that there was really immortality in this world. He'd thought that Vincent's so-called immortality was because his core was in his body. As long as he destroyed the core, he could really kill him. But just now, he'd blasted him into pieces. He could actually revive. Chen Zhao couldn't help but wonder if he really had an immortality. In a dozen seconds, Vincent recovered again. Surprised, right? Vincent looked at Chen Zhao proudly. Chen Zhao frowned. This time he raised his right arm. Holy light cannon. Boom! In an instant, the white light pierced through 100 meters. It even blasted a huge hole in the body of the cruise ship. Adele and Homesia's scalps were about to explode. Who was this guy? Or rather, was he really human? He should be able to kill him this time, right? Chen Zhao looked at the empty space. Just then, a cloud of dust blew over and a cyclone formed in the empty space. Vincent, who should have been blasted into pieces, appeared before Chen Zhao again, unharmed. Vincent's anger was gone. This time he smiled proudly again. I told you can't kill me. Chen Zhao raised his right arm again. Instantly, a terrifying electric arc exploded from his right arm. There wasn't just one electric arc, but hundreds of them. Each arc had 1,000,000 volts. In Adele and Homesia's eyes, it was as if Chen Zhao was waving countless lightning whips. A bolt of lightning instantly turned Vincent into charcoal. But this didn't mean the end. Chen Zhao was still releasing the terrifying power of lightning. Chen Zhao didn't just want to turn him into ashes. He wanted to make sure that not even a piece of Vincent was left. The terrifying electric current rampaged, whipping Vincent's charcoal-like body over and over again. Then his body started turning into ashes. In the end, he completely vaporized. This was a true evaporation of the human world. After confirming that Vincent's body had completely vaporized, Chen Zhao finally stopped releasing lightning. The metal floor had already melted into a huge hole. There was still uncooled metal liquid at the edge of the hole. Adele and Homesius didn't want to run anymore. They couldn't. With this inhuman person here, they couldn't run anywhere. However, not long after, Vincent appeared in front of Chen Zhao unscathed. Huh, your power is indeed beyond my expectations, but you still can't kill me. Black water suddenly spread under Chen Zhao's feet. The dark magma swallowed Vincent directly. However, the dark magma couldn't swallow Vincent. Vincent's power was different from the dark magma. It didn't have dark or negative attributes. So not long after, Vincent broke free from the dark magma. More accurately, Chen Zhao let him out. Vincent's personal power was actually very weak. If Chen Zhao wanted to, he could use any method to suppress him for the rest of his life. But Chen Zhao didn't care. He would have to deal with an enemy for the rest of his life. Chen Zhao felt that he would go crazy. So, Chen Zhao felt that he had to kill him here. Chapter 2434. Vincent didn't attack first either. From Chen Zhao's previous attacks, he knew that Chen Zhao was far more powerful than him. So before Chen Zhao's magic was used up, all his attacks would just be humiliating himself. Chen Zhao studied Vincent, and suddenly thought of a possibility. Chen Zhao's domain suddenly expanded. Instantly, a smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Vincent frowned. He didn't understand why Chen Zhao was smiling. But that smile gave him a bad feeling. Are you really your real body? Or rather, do you really have a physical body? Chen Zhao suddenly asked a strange question. Vincent frowned. Of course I'm real. Is there a problem? Really? Then what about the sea snake hiding at the bottom of the ship? What's your relationship with it? Vincent's expression changed, and he suddenly charged at Chen Zhao. However, Chen Zhao lifted his foot and kicked Vincent away. Seems like my guess is right. You're not your real body, and you're not a real life form either. Chen Zhao had used different elemental attacks in the previous few attacks. But Vincent could recover every time. In the last time, Chen Zhao had even vaporized him with a terrifying electric current. But he could always recover. That was why Chen Zhao was suspicious. What made Chen Zhao think this was because he'd seen the metal dragon Udal Loken. Udal Loken was still so calm when facing Zhang Tianyi and Bifla, who had overwhelming power. Even when he'd been completely melted by Bifla, he hadn't forgotten to tease Zhang Tianyi. How similar was Udal Loken at that time to Vincent at this moment? This made Chen Zhao's thoughts connect. Maybe the Vincent standing before him wasn't his real body at all. After Chen Zhao completely enveloped the cruise ship and the nearby sea, he discovered that at the bottom of the cruise ship, right below where Vincent was standing, there was a huge sea snake wandering around. Chen Zhao finally confirmed that the sea snake was Vincent's real body. As expected, when Chen Zhao revealed Vincent's real body, the sea snake immediately wanted to escape. But then, the sea snake realized that the water had bound him. It even pulled him out from the bottom of the ship. The sea snake kept resisting. However, he was unable to break free from the restraints of the seawater. The seawater lifted him out of the water, and then stuffed him into the hole that Chen Zhao had blasted open. The originally insufferably arrogant Vincent seemed to have melted. Big Del and Homesius were shocked to see a giant sea snake suddenly burrowing in from outside. The sea serpent was too huge. They even wondered if this thing was considered a sea snake. It was a giant sea snake that was more than 30 meters long and had a body diameter of nearly 1.5 meters. No, it should be called a sea monster. Even though Deep Blue was at least 6 to 7 meters tall when fully extended, Deep Blue was still able to reach a height of 7 meters. But in front of him, he was just a little loach. A smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face, but the sea serpent was not so happy. It frantically ran away, trying to escape from Chen Zhao and the cruise ship. However, it was impossible to escape from the ship. Therefore, he could only find a place to hide. What Chen Zhao didn't expect was that the giant sea snake could change colors. It could even perfectly blend into its hiding spot. I love playing hide and seek. Are you done hiding? I'm going to start looking soon. Actually, there was no need to look, because no matter how it hid, it was still within the range of Chen Zhao's small world. All of its actions were just to deceive itself. Chen Zhao lifted a finger and pointed at a warehouse. The warehouse was a few cabins away from Chen Zhao. But suddenly, an electric arc shot out from Chen Zhao's finger. It pierced through the cabins directly. With a loud, strange cry, the sea snake frantically ran out. The camouflage on its body flickered in and out. It was very unstable. Hurry up and hide. The second round is starting. Boom. The sea snake was forced out by Chen Zhao again. Adele and Homesius finally saw it. Chen Zhao was playing with the sea snake. Or rather, he was torturing it. At this moment, it vividly displayed the saying that fists were the strongest. Soon, Chen Zhao was tired of playing. The dark magma spread over and dragged the sea snake before Chen Zhao. Tell me, what ability is that? Just then, the Vincent that the sea snake had transformed into appeared again. Mirage, Vincent said. Illusion? Chen Zhao asked in surprise. It's fake, but it's not completely fake. I can use any material to build a body that's like flesh and blood, even if it's just air. Chen Zhao was surprised by this answer. It wasn't because the sea snake's ability was special. It was because Chen Zhao didn't expect it to answer his question so easily. Then what's your background? What's your goal? I'm working for my master. Then tell me about your master, Roland said with a smile. Vincent glanced at Chen Zhao. He's a demon, a pure and powerful one. And then, are you going to tell me not to seek death, and that your master won't let me go? I didn't say that. Also, my master told me that if I'm subdued, I should tell them everything I know. The person who can subdue me is definitely much stronger than me. All my resistance is futile. Your master is very wise. Chen Zhao looked at Vincent, and then at the sea snake. Then tell me. Don't hide anything. I don't know my master's name. To the outside, I always call him boss. Privately, I call him boss. I'm not interested in how you guys interact. My master is already very old. He's almost at the end of his life. But he doesn't want to die just like that. So he wants to use human technology to prolong his life. Human technology? Chen Zhao couldn't help but glance at Homesius. Yes, through human technology, Vincent said. It's indeed done, but the effects aren't as expected. Chen Zhao suddenly thought of the information he'd gotten from Isaac when he'd communicated with him. Those mutated octopuses were created from your master's cells? He used his own cells to create those mutated octopuses. Then after they absorb enough life force, they return to your master and give the life they absorbed back to your master, right? Homesius was astonished. In fact, he didn't even know what the purpose of his research was before this. Only when Chen Zhao pointed it out did he understand his investor's intentions. You know more than I thought. Chapter 2435. I can't help it, Chen Zhao said helplessly. I'm responsible for all the trouble you've caused. At the same time, Chen Zhao's gaze landed on Homesius. Homesius' heart skipped a beat. Only then did Adele understand the cause and effect of everything. Her biggest mistake was bringing Chen Zhao to her husband. If I asked you to take me to your master, would you? I can't find him. Every time Master wants to see me, he summons me directly. I don't know his exact location. Fine. Chen Zhao was a bit disappointed. Although you're very cooperative, I still have to kill you. Vincent sighed. Please don't give me too much pain. Chen Zhao was surprised. Would he accept death so calmly? Chen Zhao raised his right arm and was about to attack. Suddenly, the sea serpent's body twisted. Fuck. I got tricked. Chen Zhao charged forward, trying to catch the sea snake. But when he stretched out his hand, he grabbed nothing but air. The great sea serpent's body had already faded away. He was summoned away. Chen Zhao rubbed his forehead. He'd actually been tricked. It turned out that the great sea serpent was trying to stall for time. Since the culprit had escaped, Chen Zhao could only vent his anger on Homesius and Adele. You too, if I kill you now, you won't have any complaints, right? Adele looked at Homesius nervously. Homesius was calmer. It was impossible for them to win. Not to mention risking their lives against Chen Zhao. Even Deep Blue, the octopus behind Chen Zhao. This would allow them to return to the most basic form of carbonization. Hormetheus's thoughts spun quickly. Finally, Hormetheus thought of an idea. How can you let us go? That's impossible. You're also the main culprit. And your wife isn't a good person either. That's why you have to die. Unless you can be summoned away like that sea serpent. Is it really impossible? Why don't you pay for your lives? $100 million, and I'll pretend this never happened. Hometheus rolled his eyes. If he had $100 million, he wouldn't need to use it for research. I don't have money, but I have a way to solve this mutant octopus incident. What is it? I was the one who created the mutated octopus. Of course, I have a way to deal with them, Hometheus said. And I have a way to help you find the culprit behind this. Oh, Chen Zhao raised an eyebrow. Although Hometheus might have said that just to stall for time. However, his suggestion caught Chen Zhao's interest. Tell me, how are you going to deal with those mutant octopuses? You guys should have released quite a number of them, right? About 1 billion octopus eggs, Hometheus said. Chen Zhao snorted. 1 billion octopus eggs were quite a lot. Of course, out of 1 billion octopus eggs, less than 1 in 1,000 would survive and grow up. The mutant octopus has a backtracking characteristic. As long as we use this characteristic to create a kind of signal device and change the mutant octopus's backtracking location, it will work. You're an expert in marine biology and marine mollusks. Do you know how to make electronic equipment? I'm not the one who makes the equipment. I only provide ideas and solutions. It's not difficult. Hometheus paused. I've done experiments in the lab before. The mutant octopuses are very sensitive to infrasound of a specific frequency. As long as there's a device that can release powerful infrasound enough, we can summon all the mutant octopuses back. Chen Zhao had to admit that Hometheus's method was indeed feasible. At least, it was reasonable. Even an outsider like Chen Zhao felt that it was a good idea. Aren't you afraid that I'll burn the bridge after I know the method? Although I've told you the method, only I know the frequency of the infrasound. You might be able to find a suitable frequency through repeated attempts. But it would be a waste of time. I've heard that several coastal cities on the west coast have sealed off their coastlines. Every day they seal off their coastlines is a huge loss to the major coastal cities. Can you determine how long it will take to find a suitable infrasound frequency? My method can be implemented in 3 days at most, Hometheus said confidently. Then I can also kill you after you solve the problem. I can help you find Vincent and his master, Hometheus said. It's nothing more than using the octopuses to backtrack. Sir, Vincent's master isn't an idiot. He definitely knows the mutant octopuses better than me. Maybe he also knows how to use infrasound to set up an infrasound device in one or a few places, and then summon the mutant octopuses back. If you set up a tracking device on one or a few mutant octopuses, you might not find anything in the end. Then what method do you have? Sir, you haven't agreed to my request. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin. After thinking for a while he said, You've caused quite a lot of trouble this time. I won't be happy if I let you go like this. This yacht will be our compensation. Is that okay? Hometheus asked. Is this yacht under your name? No. Then how are you going to compensate me? This yacht isn't under anyone's name, at least not nominally. If you have the means, you can find a shipbuilding company to register it, and then transfer the yacht to your own name under the guise of purchasing it. How do you know so much? Have you worked in this industry before? Homesius shook his head. Because I want to do that too, so I found a professional to understand it. I just haven't had the time to do it yet. To be honest, Chen Zhao was tempted by Homesius' suggestion. After all, this yacht was very expensive. The battle just now had caused some damage to the hull, but it wasn't a big deal. He could spend 10 to 20 million to fix it up. If he erased some of the traces here, it would be a real luxurious yacht. In principle, I agree to your conditions, but I can't give you any guarantees. If you want me to sign a contract or swear, I can satisfy you, but neither contract nor oath has any binding force on me. As long as you agree, Homesius said calmly. It seemed like he trusted Chen Zhao completely. Of course, he wasn't that naive. Actually, this kind of mutual compromise had some reservations. Perhaps Chen Zhao hadn't completely given up on killing them. And Homesius might not solve the problem honestly. Perhaps he had left behind other backup plans. Chapter 2436. Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't let Homesius and Adele go directly. First, he had to get someone to take over the ship. West, I'll give you my current location. Send someone over. Remember to bring Giselle and Jalik. Chen Zhao called West. Bring more people. There's a lot of work here. Bring Henry and the others too. Henry and his thugs were official members of the supernatural organization now. Like Klaus's lightning team, they were all normal people, but they'd come into contact with the supernatural world. Plus, they respected Chen Zhao. Now they saw themselves as members of the supernatural organization. Of course, not all of them stayed in the organization. Half of them were in Los Angeles and relied on the organization's funds to open convenience stores, restaurants, or other businesses. Other than creating additional income for the supernatural organization, they also provided limited intelligence to the organization. They couldn't say anything about the supernatural organization's existence or relationship with the organization. Also, they couldn't become street thugs anymore. Because of his awakening, Henry continued to stay in the organization. He was the organization's internal affairs manager. He was mainly in charge of the remaining half, and some internal affairs. Occasionally, they'd go and help with some normal supernatural events. For example, this ship needed to be cleaned and cleaned. Clearly, they couldn't find a regular cleaning company. They could only find their own people. A while later, West arrived with a large group of people. Not just Henry and his men, but also Pamela and her evil spirit army. West walked up to Chen Zhao. President, what's going on here? They're the main culprits of the mutant octopus incident, Chen Zhao said, pointing at Homesius. Chen Zhao roughly told him what had happened. West now understood why Chen Zhao had asked Giselle and Jalik to come. They were both good with machines, especially Giselle. She could control them. Oh, remember to arrange a luxurious suite for them, Chen Zhao said. West knew what Chen Zhao meant. The so-called luxurious suite was actually the organization's dungeon. The dungeon in the headquarters wasn't creepy, but it wasn't luxurious either. However, all the prisoners were spiritualists. 2 days later, West reported to Chen Zhao that the mutant octopus incident had basically calmed down. First of all, Prometheus had stopped releasing mutated octopus eggs, solving the root of the problem. Secondly, the vast majority of the mutant octopuses had already been recalled through the so-called infrasonic wave device. At the same time, the mutant octopuses had been fished out and then incinerated. Chen Zhao also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, the mutant octopus incident wasn't just a single city's problem anymore. Even the Environmental Protection Department was involved in the investigation. The environmentalists felt that it was the excessive destruction of the ecological balance by human beings that led to the retaliation of nature. This caused the security department, and even the higher-ups, to put pressure on the supernatural organization. Chen Zhao finally didn't have to run around so busily anymore. In fact, this was mainly because Chen Zhao basically didn't care about small matters. In fact, The supernatural organization received missions almost every day. However, these matters were all taken over by others. For example, Klaus and his lightning team were currently on a mission abroad. Of course, their mission was not an overseas mission. Instead, the person who caused the incident ran to another country after committing the crime in Los Angeles. That was why Klaus and the lightning squad gave chase. Now that he was free, Chen Zhao was extremely happy. Fei Lai also continued her work. Most of the children in the family were sent to school, except for 5-year-old Sindora and 6-year-old Myra. The other children, including 7-year-old Elijah and Binance, 8-year-old Ferentia, 11-year-old Kilo, and 12-year-old Didala, were all sent to school. Only little Jerlin, little Larissa, Sindora, and Myra were left at home. The house was much quieter too, including Chen Zhao. The remaining children weren't used to this feeling of emptiness. Thankfully, they didn't board at school. Dashan Elementary couldn't board either. They still went home at night. Chen Zhao didn't pick them up. He still let them go home by themselves for the first time. However, Chen Zhao gave each of them a bicycle. Moreover, Dashan Elementary was less than 3 kilometers away from Mirror Lake. A one-way bike ride would take less than 15 minutes. This wasn't an unacceptable distance. Moreover, if Chen Zhao drove his family car to pick them up, it would probably be even more difficult for them to blend in with the other students. At night, the whole family arrived. However, Elijah and Binance quickly integrated into school life. They excitedly talked about their classmates and how they got along with each other. Ferentia and Didala were more cheerful. They had a good time at school too. Kilo was an enhancer, but he was an extremely introverted child. He probably didn't make any new friends today. Chen Zhao wasn't in a hurry to intervene. Even the most introverted children could make friends in school. As the saying went, birds of a feather flock together. In a school, there would always be a few introverted children. Then they would be attracted to each other. Perhaps they would be lifelong friends. Chen Zhao vaguely remembered that he wasn't that sociable in elementary school either. However, he could always make friends. After dinner, the children continued to play and fool around as usual. Chen Zhao sat on the wooden rack in the front yard and fished. Just then the housekeeper spoke. "Master, there's a guest." The housekeeper system could identify the identity of the visitor by scanning the license plate. Since it didn't say who the visitor was, the license plate probably wasn't in the housekeeper system's database. Chen Zhao put down the fishing rod and stood up to walk to the door. A black SUV was parked outside the door. Seeing Chen Zhao, the person in the car immediately got out. Chen Zhao saw that it was Yang Guo and his 2 senior brothers, Dao Er and Dao San. "Hello, Mr. Chen." Dao Er and Dao San were quite proactive. As for Yang Guo, he was a bit awkward. "Hello, fellow cultivators. How have you been in Los Angeles?" "It's pretty good. We even went to Hollywood. Also, we met a production team looking for an extra. We went in and asked for one," Dao Er said straightforwardly. "Let's go in and sit." "No thanks," Dao Er said. "Your house is really beautiful and has good feng shui. If we go in, it'll probably be corrupted by capitalism. God King of the 9 heavens." Chapter 2437. Dao Er and Dao Sen clearly weren't here to get to know Chen Zhao. There was no need for them to make friends with Chen Zhao. After all, in terms of seniority, they were all 1 generation lower than Chen Zhao. In this era, few people cared about seniority. But there were still people who cared about seniority. They weren't here as guests. They were here to accompany Yang Guo. So the person in charge this time should be Yang Guo. "Hi Yang. Chen Zhao, I have something to ask you." "Are you asking me? Or are you asking me?" "Yes." Yang Guo took a deep breath and said slowly, "I want to know the real situation in Bermuda. I've never been to Bermuda. How would I know?" Chen Zhao asked. "Let me put it another way. If the psionic team attacks Bermuda, what are their chances of winning?" 1%, Chen Zhao said. Even if Chen Zhao was telling the truth, Yang Guo and the psionic team might not believe him. They were enemies now, so they wouldn't believe anything Chen Zhao said. "Junior, listen to me and go back. If you stay, you'll die," Dao Er advised. But Yang Guo didn't back down. He stared at Chen Zhao. who was leaning against the door frame with a smile on his face. He knew why Yang Guo was here this time. Actually, he wanted to get some information about Bermuda. Unfortunately, he was wrong. He didn't have any information about Bermuda at all. Even if he did, he wouldn't tell him in detail. Of course, it would be a good result if he could coax Yang Guo away. But seeing Yang Guo's stubbornness, he probably wouldn't give up no matter what he said. Since you don't know the situation in Bermuda, how can you be so sure that we'll lose? With your attitude, I'd throw you into the lake and drown you if you were someone else. Luckily, you have a good background and people protecting you. Chen Zhao glanced at Yang Guo. Anyway, I've already said it. Your life and death have nothing to do with me. Chen Zhao glanced at Dao Er and Dao San. You too, when you return, send my regards to old Zhang. As for him, I don't think you should care about his life or death. If he wants to die, then let him. Dao Er and Dao San really wanted to wash their hands of this. However, they had watched Yang Guo grow up. Although he was their junior brother, he was actually around the same age as their sons and grandsons. How could he really watch him die? Chen Zhao and Yang Guo were neither relatives nor friends, and they had old grudges. Naturally, his words were vicious and merciless. But the two of them couldn't bring themselves to say that they should just let it go. With Yang Guo's stubborn temper, if they said that if he didn't listen, they would expel him from the sect. Yang Guo might really leave with the crime of betraying the sect. Even Zhang Tianyi didn't dare to provoke Yang Guo like this, so they naturally didn't dare to. But Chen Zhao didn't have such concerns. Yang Guo's expression naturally did not look too good. But I say, if you want to die, just die. Don't drag your wife to die with you. Bermuda is really a dangerous place. Chen Zhao had only met Akrabumon once, but he had a good impression of her. At least, apart from Yang Guo, Chen Zhao had a good relationship with the people from Dragon Tiger Mountain. Yang Guo was angry and annoyed, but Chen Zhao's words left a knot in his heart. There was no doubt that Bermuda was dangerous. Was he really going to let his wife take the risk with him? Although Akrabumon wasn't a member of the psionic team, but this time, he was going to conquer Bermuda, and his wife wanted to go with him. Yang Guo understood that Akrabumon was worried about him. Yang Guo did not intend to let Akrabumon take the risk. But Akrabumon was adamant. No matter how Yang Guo tried to persuade her, he couldn't get her to give up on this idea. Then, because Toddy Belster had shown her strength, it was only a matter of time. This made him feel that he had a good chance of success in this expedition to Bermuda. That was why he agreed to Akrabumon's request. He thought about how powerful the psionic ability team was. He also had Toddy Belster as a strong support. The expedition to Bermuda this time should be in the bag. With the addition of Akrabumon, victory was almost within their grasp. However, when he heard Chen Zhao's words, he felt a chill run down his spine. This made him hesitate again. Bumon is already an adult dragon. She can protect herself. I've been a dragon slayer before. Every dragon I killed was an adult. None of them were young. Do you think they can't protect themselves? Chen Zhao looked at Yang Guo with a cold smile. Some abilities determine whether someone can protect themselves, not how strong they are, but how strong their opponent is. Plus, I've seen Xiaolongnu before. She's not weak, but she's not that strong either. Yang Guo looked at Xiaolongnu coldly. Chen Zhao's words were not pleasant to hear, but Yang Guo understood what he meant. There was something in Bermuda that was more powerful than Akrabumon, and much more powerful. Yang Guo did not want to believe this, but there was a voice in his heart that kept telling him, "Don't let your wife take the risk with you. That would kill her." Yang Guo left somewhat dejected. When he came here, he was actually looking for confidence. He wanted to see Chen Zhao respond to him with other attitudes. For example, mocking him or threatening him. But Chen Zhao's attitude disappointed him. Chen Zhao's tone was calm, as if he was stating a fact. This made Yang Guo even more uneasy. Was there really such a terrifying thing in Bermuda? The car didn't go far. Chen Zhao was about to return to his room. Suddenly, a figure appeared before him. Dao San. Master, what are you doing? Don't you know that scaring people can scare people to death? Mr. Chen, I want to entrust you. Dao San looked at Chen Zhao helplessly, his face full of bitter smiles. Entrust me with what? Chen Zhao looked at him curiously. This shouldn't be Dao San's real body, right? Chen Zhao poked Dao San's body. Don't move. This is a spell. It's not my real body, but it has my consciousness. Fine. Chen Zhao retracted his arm, but his eyes were still filled with interest. I want you to help me bring the couple back. Chen Zhao looked at Dao San. Sorry, I can't do it. Mr. Chen. Grandmaster has already promised that as long as you can help, he'll pay any price. I'm not a kindergarten teacher who has to watch over a stubborn couple. I've already said everything I need to say, but they still want to die. I can't do anything about it. If you want to use force, I don't need to do it myself. You two are many times stronger than Yanghua. Is there a need for an outsider like me to do it? Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2438. If it was someone else, even if they had nothing to do with Chen would be willing to help. But Yanghua was different. He had betrayed Chen. No one could deny that. It was Yanggua's own promise. He had promised Chen one thing. Even if he had rejected him, Chen wouldn't be so angry. At most, he would extort some benefits from Zhang Tianyi, and the matter would be over. But Yanghua had thrown himself into his enemy's arms. Chen couldn't accept that. Now, Zhang Tianyi wanted him to take care of Yanghua like a child. Did he have nothing better to do? Therefore, Chen rejected Dao San's request without hesitation. Zhang Tianyi had called Chen a few times before, but Chen rejected him without hesitation. This time, Chen wouldn't give Dao San face either. Moreover, it wasn't a matter of face. Chen was already being merciful by not throwing Yanghua into the sea to feed the sharks. Chen had to stick to Yanggua's cold butt? Dao San sighed. His body turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. He wasn't surprised by Chen's rejection. It was just a test. He didn't have much hope in the first place. Chen returned to his fishing post and continued his cultivation life. Beep. Just then, a car horn sounded outside again. Chen's face darkened. Anyone who honked at his door was someone he knew. As expected, the butler system told Chen who it was. Hi, Chen. James was standing in front of the door with a smile. Chen's smile stiffened. The butler had told him that it was James. However, he didn't tell Chen that James had brought a motorcade. Are you planning to move? Chen stared at James with a dark expression. He didn't understand what James was planning. It seemed like James wanted to do something in his house. But he didn't tell Chen beforehand, right? Chen, do me a favor. My new movie is about to be released, but it was rejected by the production company during the screening. The market research isn't ideal either. James looked at Chen bitterly. The production company wants me to reshoot some scenes and re-edit them in 2 weeks. Some of the scenes require a mansion. I've already found a mansion and signed a contract with the owner. I was planning to go there to film, but the owner stood me up. I had no choice but to bring the crew to you. Chen Zhao looked at James with a bitter expression. You're right. You're going to shoot a movie in my house? Chen finally understood why James didn't tell him anything. He planned to cut the Gordian knot and bring the crew over first, then pretend to be pitiful. However, he had to admit that his method was indeed very effective. He was quite familiar with James. Now that he was in trouble, he needed help. Chen Zhao really couldn't say no. How long will it take? Chen asked. Not many, just a few dozen shots. And all of them are in the living room and the garden. There's no need to use other parts of your house. And it should be done in one night. Chen had been involved in filming before, so he knew that a few dozen scenes weren't a lot. A movie might have thousands, or even tens of thousands of shots. Even after editing, there would still be 2,000 to 3,000 scenes left. So a few dozen shots really weren't a lot. The time needed to shoot dozens of shots was only a few hours. However, the most troublesome part was the set. It would take at least twice as long. In other words, it would take at least a day for the set to be set up, filmed, and wrapped up. Chen, I'm begging you. This is my second movie. If I mess it up, I'll be done for. I'll have to go to San Fernando Valley to film. Fine. I'll tell Fei Lai. Chen finally relented. Also, give me a close-up shot of my beer brand for 1 second. Sure, no problem. James was overjoyed. Chen went into the house and told Fei Lai. Fei Lai, James needs help now. I've already promised him. What do you think? You already promised him. How can I say no? Fei Lai rolled her eyes. Whatever. We'll stay at Minghua Villa for a few days. Don't look at what James said. They only needed the scenes in the living room and yard. In fact, if he had other ideas, he would have other requests. Should he cooperate or not? Also, even if it was just the scenes in the living room and yard, it would be difficult to stay in the 2 days of filming. Would the children at home delay the filming? Or would it affect the family's rest and entertainment? So temporarily changing places was the best choice. Okay. Chen nodded. At the same time, he had the children return to their rooms to pack up. They would stay at Minghua Villa for a few days. Chen went out to talk to James again. James, Fei Lai, the kids, and I will stay at Minghua Villa for a few days. I'll leave Mirror Lake to you. Also, you've obtained the 3rd level of authority in the butler system. Thank you. Thank Fei Lai for me too, James said gratefully. Oh, can I borrow your car? Sure. I won't take the keys with me, but don't damage my car, Chen reminded. If you're tired, you can find an empty room to rest, but I don't want other people to stay in my house. Of course. I promise you that I'll love your house as much as my own. After I'm done, I'll treat you to a meal. Also, when will the movie be released? It was originally scheduled to be released on February 14th, but now the producers are very dissatisfied with my edited version, so it may be delayed. James sighed. Although he was famous now, many people in Hollywood said that his fame was the peak. His next movie might fall from the peak. So James urgently needed a second movie to prove himself. Your second movie is a romance? There shouldn't be any genre other than romance that could be scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day, right? Yes. Didn't you pay attention to my new movie? The trailer of my new movie has been out for a while. I've been a bit busy, Chen said awkwardly. Okay, but you definitely have to watch my new movie. Okay. As long as it's suitable, I'll bring my family to support your new movie. If James' new movie was G-rated or PG-rated, Chen would bring his family to watch it. G-rated movies were suitable for all ages. PG-rated movies had some violence and nudity, but it wouldn't affect the sensory experience of minors. Chapter 2439. Fei Lai took the kids to Moon Villa first. Chen Zhao stayed behind to talk to James and see if they needed help. The people in James's crew were all experienced, but setting up was very complicated. Most of the time, Chen Zhao felt tired just watching it. James could rent a manor like this outside, not to mention whether he could find it. The rental fee per day was $100,000 to $200,000. Of course, there weren't many manors of this size in Los Angeles. Most of the owners were unreachable too. They didn't need $100,000. This was the manor that James had rented before. They'd agreed on it and even signed a contract. In the end, the other party fell out with him, and James couldn't do anything about it. If James dared to sue the other party with the contract, the other party's lawyers would play with him for 3 years. There was a law in America that if a movie had a lawsuit, it couldn't be shown during the lawsuit period. So, even though James had been tricked, he still had to grit his teeth and take it. If James wanted to sue the other party after the movie stopped screening, the other party could say that James didn't come on the day of the appointment. Here, not every rich person knew how to take advantage of loopholes. But rich people had their own lawyers who knew how to take advantage of loopholes. Jane Rodale, come here. Just then, a man and a woman walked over. The man was handsome, and the woman was pretty. This was Chen Zhao's first impression. Hello Jane, our female lead, James introduced. Mander Rodale, the male lead. Chen, the owner of this manor and my friend. He's a rich man. Actually, Holo Jane and Mandy Rodale had been nearby the whole time. They didn't come over. They were waiting for James to call them over, so they could get to know Chen Zhao. They weren't A-listers in Hollywood. Mandy Rodale was better. He had some fame in Hollywood. At least, Chen Zhao had an impression of him. Before Holo Jane acted in James's movie, she was just a passerby. She didn't have any fame. Her conditions were outstanding, but there were at least 1,000 people with her conditions in Hollywood. James chose them because they were cheap, had some acting skills, and suited the characters. At the same time, They were easier to control than those big stars. James's first movie had already pushed him to the top. However, he was not considered an A-list director. Compared to many big stars, he was still at a disadvantage. If there was a conflict, it was likely that James would be the one to compromise. Unless it was someone at Steven's level, he dared to tell anyone who dared to clash with him on the set to get lost. Holo Jean and Mandrottle wanted to get to know Chen Zhao, a rich man. For them, networking was very important. There was no doubt that Chen Zhao was rich. Moreover, Chen Zhao was familiar with James. This made them believe that Chen Zhao was worth investing in. Chen Zhao shook hands with the male and female leads. Chen Zhao didn't have the friendliness of the black man. Therefore, the conversation after the handshake was very restrained. "Chen, don't you have servants at home?" "No," Chen Zhao said calmly. "I don't like outsiders interfering with my family and my life." "This manor is huge," Holo exclaimed. She had yet to enter, but just the appearance alone was enough to stun her. There was also the grassland behind him, and the mirror-like lake in front of him. On the other side was a lush forest. The manor was like a perfect work of modern technology and nature. Not only is this manor big, but it's also expensive. James had been to Mirror Lake before. He also knew that Chen Zhao's original mansion had been destroyed by the super hurricane Holy Infant. After eating with Chen Zhao and Stephen a few times, he knew how much Chen Zhao had invested in the rebuilt manor. Just the transplanting and purchasing of the plants in the yard was more than $500,000. The equipment and housekeeping system were also more than $10 million. He hadn't planned on asking Chen Zhao for help at first. After all, the cost of Chen Zhao's manor was shocking even to him. If anything was damaged during filming, it would be a loss of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Especially Chen Zhao's private wine cellar and personal storage of food ingredients. They were all priceless, high-end and rare items. If anyone in the crew did anything dirty, it could cause irreparable damage. If he had a choice, James wouldn't even be willing to bring the crew here. Chen Zhao was willing to open up his collection to him when he was a guest. That was a personal friendship. But if it was because of a problem at work that caused Chen Zhao to suffer losses, by then, it would affect their friendship even if Chen Zhao didn't ask for compensation. Thankfully, Chen Zhao didn't think too much. "Chen, let's go in and look at the set." James was still worried. Although the set didn't need to be renovated, the layout would be changed. When Chen Zhao entered the living room, he realized that it was already messy. Chen Zhao's heart ached. He rubbed his forehead. James also noticed it. He yelled at the crew members who were setting up the set. "Who left the stuff there? Who left the wrench there?" Holo and Romain Rottle's attention was focused on the structure of the huge living room. It was just a living room, but it was filled with modern technology. It even gave people the feeling that they were in a futuristic sci-fi world. From the outside to the inside, the manor had a master-level design style. "Okay, I'll leave it to you. James, I'm going to stay at the house by the sea for a few days." Chen Zhao felt that it was better not to see it. If he stayed here, he would only feel heartache. Seeing Chen Zhao leave, James also let out a long sigh. If Chen Zhao was here, it would be really hard for his crew to progress. "Director, does this manor cost 20 million? Holo Jean asked curiously. 20 million? Ha! James sneered. Chen invested no less than 100 million into this manor. His friends offered him 300 million, but he still didn't sell. Holo Jean and Romain Rottle couldn't help but gasp. Even if their assets were multiplied by 10 times, they still wouldn't be worth as much as this manor. You can get double the profit and he still won't sell? No matter how good this manor is, it can't be worth 300 million, right? It's not up to you to decide whether it's worth or not. Chen Zhao really doesn't care about a few hundred million. Odhar said, "Our research topics are different. Of course, this does not hinder his reputation in our industry. But please believe me, I may not be as good as him in terms of research topics, but my professionalism is definitely above his." Nancy Chilla was curled up on her bed at the moment. He knew he was in big trouble this time. He was charged with multiple offenses. If all these crimes were carried out, then he would have to stay in prison until the end of time. He thought of an idea. That was to use his reputation in the field of oceanography to find some peers to endorse him. He could have them speak up for him in the media. He might not be able to wash away all the crimes, but he could at least reduce many of them. However, the few peers that his lawyer had contacted all rejected his request. Even his lawyer dealt with him in a perfunctory manner. Nancy Chilla knew that this was most likely Chen Zhao's doing. He'd originally thought that Chen Zhao was just rich. But Chen Zhao was Asian. Asians had always been honest in North America. He felt that what he'd done was so secretive. Chen Zhao couldn't possibly know. Even if he did, he couldn't do anything if he didn't have evidence. He didn't think that he would be exposed before he could even be happy for 2 days. On the second and third day, more and more bad news came from the lawyer. He heard that Chen Zhao had specially found an evaluation agency to evaluate and appraise the giant clam in order to deal a heavy blow to him. Nancy Chilla was an expert in marine biology, so he knew the value of the giant clam better than anyone. It was not something that could be measured with money. He knew it even better than the owner, Chen Zhao. The giant clam was a priceless treasure. Normal giant clams had a lifespan of around 100 years. Occasionally, giant clams with a lifespan of 200, 300, or even longer would be discovered. In 2007, Fei LB had discovered the largest and oldest giant clam to date. According to the test, the giant clam was 500 years old. Its weight reached 1,758 kilograms, and at the same time, it produced 27 pearls. The inner wall of the carapace showed a jade-like phenomenon, which was similar to jade. That was why giant clams were also called living gems. Almost every country forbade harvesting giant clams. Nancy Chilla had also studied marine crustaceans. The giant clam's shell becoming jade-like was an exception, and it was almost impossible for a living giant clam to become jade-like. But Nancy Chilla knew that if the giant clam didn't die after its lifespan, it would produce some special substance that would make the giant clam's shell become jade-like. Of course, that special substance could even obviously improve a person's body functions. Nancy Chilla called this special substance the perfect factor. This was also the reason why he'd wanted to steal Chen Zhao's shark at first, but after discovering the giant clam, he'd suddenly changed his mind. Vincent spread out his hands and said, "But for you, there's no other choice now. Either you choose to spend the rest of your life in a dark prison, or you accept my kindness. Anyway, your situation can't get any worse, can it? I want to know, what does your boss want me to do?" The contract did not state your boss's intentions. Of course, it's to use your professional knowledge to study marine biology. There are many experts in marine biology. I'm not the best. No, in some fields you're the best. At least that's what Homesius once said about you. Nancy Kira suddenly widened her eyes and looked at Vincent in shock. Homesius? Does he also work for your boss? Once, Vincent said indifferently. Regardless of our falling out, he and his wife destroyed my boss's research and ran away with the research data. Vincent added. But during our cooperation, Homesius said more than once that if it were you, you would have already achieved results. No matter how beautiful your words are, you can't hide the fact that I'm actually Homesius's substitute. No, not substitute, it's replace. Vincent corrected Nancy Kira's cognitive bias. Even before we fell out, he didn't research results that satisfied my boss. So even if Homesius didn't fall out with us, we had to terminate our cooperation. It doesn't say how I'll be treated. How much is your original income? My boss can give you 10 times the treatment. I don't just want money. Then what else do you want? Take revenge on that Chinese for me. Sorry, the boss won't go to war with him for you. If you think you have the ability, you can go yourself. Vincent refused directly. Your boss is only SOSO. He's actually afraid of that Chinese. You're not worth it for my boss to go to war with that Chinese. At least for now, you're far from worth it. What if I can prove my worth? Then we'll talk about it when you prove your worth. I can create unimaginable wealth for your boss, Nancy Kira said. When money reaches a certain level, there's no essential difference between $1 billion and $10 billion. My boss isn't so superficial to pursue wealth. Rich people are all so hypocritical. Back then, Nancy Kira had seen rich people for research funding, a lot of rich people. And rich people always said that when money reached a certain level, it was only a difference in numbers. In fact, these rich people were still pursuing even greater wealth with no regard for their own safety. Then what's your answer? Accept or refuse? I accept, Nancy Kira said. You also said that this is my last chance. Nancy Kira signed her name on the contract. Wise choice. Vincent smiled brightly. You won't regret your decision. Then when can I leave here? Nancy Kira asked. Tonight, Vincent said. Tonight? Are you guys that efficient? Can you get the police to release me tonight? Maybe not get the police to release you. Bail? My bail is very high.